join my fiance and I October 30th at 6 p.m. as we count down to Halloween during our live drunk horror movie watch party. The 2020s have been awesome for fans of horror cinema. We've seen both amazing sequels to some of our favorite horror IPs, and original films from the indie scene and mainstream Hollywood that are equally as amazing. And with many more anticipated horror films coming out, the hype from horror fans isn't slowing down anytime soon. While there were numerous fantastic horror films that came out in the last 5 years, there may have been some great scary films that you unintentionally slept on. These films are guaranteed to satisfy both hardcore horror audiences and the casual spooky viewer. Here are 10 horror films of the 2020s so far that you do not want to miss. The kaiju subgenre has always dipped and peaked throughout the years. After its explosion of popularity in the 1950s, Godzilla has always been the most recognized giant monster of all time, spawning countless sequels, adaptations, and reimaginings of the kaiju. While many of these films focus on the action or science of the creature, Godzilla Minus One went back to the series' horror and thematic roots in such a legendary way. Set in post-World War II Japan, the film follows a former kamikaze pilot who suffers from PTSD after his initial encounter with the titular monster. A tale of revenge and redemption ensues as he and a handful of volunteers set to stop Godzilla from destroying their country once again. The film does an incredible job at echoing the themes of the original Godzilla film, with anti-war messaging at its forefront. By focusing on one central character as opposed to a group, the film allows audiences to reflect themselves onto the character, making this one of the most empathy-provoking Godzilla films to date. This aspect never falters, as even with the sensitive topic of post-traumatic stress that affected real-world soldiers following the war is properly exhibited amongst the film's other serious themes. Godzilla itself is a sight to behold in almost every film depicting the beast, and this instance is no exception, with a deep focus on the creature's menacing aura. Kaiju fans rejoice, as this film reached global success more so than any other Zilla film released from its country of origin has in years. A visual spectacle and emotional roller coaster, Godzilla Minus One effectively showcases the true horrors of war and serves as a foreboding reminder of the same ideology the very first Godzilla movie conveyed. Before we continue, a couple of honorable mentions: Late Night with the Devil and Dream Scenario. I already talked about these films last week, so for the sake of brevity, check out that video if you haven't already. Australia is a country known for its real-world horrors, being a vast unknown area when it was originally colonized, to today where outsiders are cursed with images of creatures such as this, whom frequently roam the landscape. In 2022, Australia succeeded in horrifying us once again when Talk to Me hit the silver screen. A severed hand capable of communicating with the dead by means of possession sparks the intrigue of a group of teens. They each take turns becoming possessed until they reach the point of no return when the spirits become more and more malevolent. While spirit possession movies aren't uncommon, this film breathes an air of originality in both its premise and its delivery. The scares are plenty and hardly ever dote on cliches, uniquely manifesting its own brand of horror. The film's subject of loss and grief carries the narrative spectacularly and never falls short of its messages. The story itself allows audiences to find relatability in the lead character's struggle, as both the writing and pacing of the narrative are handled exceptionally well. Talk to Me is a thrilling and engaging horror spectacle, and with the promise of a sequel and even a prequel, it's shaping up to be a franchise that will horrify moviegoers for years to come. In 2022, the world was introduced to the psychological horror film Smile. It was such a huge success that it was only a matter of time when we'd receive a sequel. Smile 2 follows a pop star as she prepares for a comeback tour after recovering from substance abuse and the death of her boyfriend. She's eventually exposed to the smiling entity and is sent down a horrifying spiral of delusions and paranoia. The film took what was set up in the first Smile and ran with it in a way that elevates it well above its predecessor. Not too many films, especially within the horror genre, take the perspective of a fictional celebrity in the way this film does. This aspect absolutely highlights the uniquity the series has already established. The film is yet another on this list that showcases mental health superbly and places the leading character's struggles at the forefront. And you can't talk about these films without mentioning the stunning scares that appear throughout. Visually remarkable and psychologically disturbing, when a scary moment happens in this film, they're most certain to stick with you. Smile 2 is an incredible sequel in a modern classic franchise. When it comes to horror films, there's no escaping the classics. In 1973, The Exorcist disturbed and fascinated audiences worldwide, becoming the first horror film ever to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture, spawned several sequels, rip-offs, and a TV series, and has even been selected for preservation in the US National Film Registry. Although the series definitely had its low points, and no new film was made in nearly 20 years, The Exorcist Believer brought the franchise back for modern audiences. When two girls are found after going missing for a few days, they begin to display abnormal health and behavior. One of the girls' fathers, a man who lost his faith, is forced to turn to the church for help. Religion-focused supernatural horror films don't normally hit the same way they did since the franchise's start, but this film capitalizes on the genre and delivers a serviceable sequel. The violence in horror is very reminiscent of the original Exorcist film, and the allusions to the franchise's beginning are more than welcomed. Unfortunately, the film received negative reviews upon release, and a disappointing box office return. It's such a shame too, as this film was meant to be the start of a new Exorcist trilogy, but now that idea has been scrapped. Hopefully with time, retrospective analyses will be a little kinder to this film. While no sequel will ever live up to the expectations of the original, The Exorcist Believer still manages to be an enjoyable supernatural horror experience. In spite of this film's negative critiques, do yourself a favor by checking it out and forming your own opinion. Farce, parody, gore, and splatter, the king of low-budget horror comedies. Troma Entertainment is a company that needs no introduction. For more than 50 years, Troma has produced and distributed some of the greatest independent B-movies of all time, and launched the careers of many renowned filmmakers. The company's claim to fame was The Toxic Avenger, which sparked a long-lasting and beloved franchise. 25 years passed since the last film, when The Toxic Avenger finally made its way back to theaters in a modern reboot. A janitor who has never had a break in his life is suddenly murdered with his body dumped into a vat of toxic sludge. The sludge revives and transforms him into a superpowered mutant, who now embarks on a killing spree to clean the injustices of the world. The film is a huge love letter to both the franchise and Troma's other films, as it perfectly matches the vibe and unique brand of humor the company is known for. Much of the film is campy and cheesy, but it is in such a way that exudes charm rather than looking like something that was cheaply made. The gore is as plenty as always, making it a more violent superhero story than The Boys and Invincible combined. The political satire is not only absolutely funny, but very timely. The filmmakers even used its marketing budget to buy out $5 million of medical debt, and the distributor matched in donations every $1 million that the film made in the box office. With all the wrong in the world going on right now, The Toxic Avenger, as a little person taking on the evil corruptors of our world, truly becomes the hero we need now. Director Macon Blair not only perfectly recaptured the world that Lloyd Kaufman created, but resurrected the Tromaverse for contemporary audiences. The Toxic Avenger is a must-watch for fans of horror and Troma's classic works. The vampire genre has always had its mainstay in horror, with many films throughout cinema history adding a unique twist to the blood-sucking monsters. This decade hasn't forgotten about these Nightwalkers either, with terrific films like Abigail and Nosferatu coming out and receiving much acclaim. While these two films fell just short of making this list, Sinners is absolutely a film that deserves its spot here. In the 1930s, two identical twin brothers returned to their rural southern home to establish a juke joint. The transcendent music unintentionally attracts the attention of vampires who descend upon the joint and want in. Set in the Jim Crow era, the racial themes expressed unrest are never lost. The film cleverly utilizes vampire tropes to convey the real struggles African Americans face during this period, and addresses the struggles that subsist to this day. The themes and music go hand in hand in this film, as it draws the parallel of the birth of African American culture and the blues music and dancing that spawned from the juke joints of this era. The juxtaposition in the folk religious music of the vampires and the blues music from the protagonists further conveys these themes of segregation. The vampires are threatening on a whole other level, going beyond the typical supernatural evil by expressing ideologies of genuine evil individuals. Sinners is a fantastic horror film that reinvents the vampire genre while expertly depicting the societal unrest that continues to plague the United States South. The 1980s saw the rise of the slasher antagonist to the mainstream. Horror icons like Freddy and Jason are still beloved characters who make their appearance in pop culture to this day. Although there weren't a lot of characters to reach the level of notoriety slasher antagonists have in contemporary horror cinema, Art the Clown emerged to fill the void horror fans were waiting for. His latest appearance in Terrifier 3 is definitely the best entry in the franchise yet. 5 years following the events of the last film, a woman who encountered the clown attempts to rebuild her life and celebrate the holiday season. Unfortunately for her, Art never died, and he and his new accomplice have been waiting for the opportunity to strike again. While it wasn't the first Christmas slasher film, it is by far the greatest in this atypical subgenre. The franchise has never been afraid to show the most grotesque, uncensored violence that would have had it banned during the golden age of slashers. Having a much larger budget than its predecessors, this film boasts as the most bloody and gory entry in the series thus far. Despite this, Art the Clown remains as goofy as ever, furthering audiences' love of the character. Terrifier 3 is a huge step in the right direction of the series in every aspect, catapulting Art as a modern-day horror icon and leaving fans excited for the next venture. Space. Although intriguing, it can be very scary. The ignorance our species has against the boundless infinity of the universe makes space such a great setting for horror. The Alien franchise took the slasher genre and placed it in an unfamiliar, yet entirely imaginative location to incredible success. While the first two films were critically and commercially acclaimed, the series went downhill hard and never reached the level of notability since. That was until 2024 when audiences were graced with Alien Romulus. Set between the first two films, Romulus sees 6 young space colonists escaping a work colony in pursuit of a more free life on another planet. Their plan falls through after boarding an abandoned space station harboring extraterrestrial nightmares. This is the best Alien film in years, going back to the series' roots visually and emphasizing practical effects throughout its production. Because of this, the film is beautiful in its set and creature designs, and the cinematography exposes this aspect of the film superbly. The xenomorph looks as intimidating as ever, even more so than the previous sequels. The twists of horror throughout the film are as unique and surprising as they are scary. The callbacks to the first Alien film are brilliantly done and much welcome for fans of the series. Alien Romulus resurrected a fascinating franchise and manages to be an unforgettable space horror film in its own right. And with Alien Earth taking off as critically as it did, this is far from the last time we'll be seeing these creatures bursting out of the big screen. Body horror is a subgenre that has lost its luster over the years. If you've been on the internet long enough, you've probably seen more disturbing actual body horror that no film could possibly emulate. But when The Substance hit the theaters, it succeeded in bringing the subgenre back into the limelight. When a fading Hollywood celebrity hits rock bottom, she is offered a miracle black market drug that promises a younger, more beautiful, more perfect version of herself. After taking the substance, a younger woman emerges from her, instigating a struggle of identity, jealousy, and rapid body mutilation. The film is a satire of both the stereotypical Hollywood identity and the constant pursuit of inconceivable beauty standards. Being a body horror film, it never shies away from the grotesque, with extreme close-ups that highlight the most disturbing aspects of the character's transformation. The film verges on comedy almost, with this hyper-realist style that overtly exaggerates its themes in the best ways possible. The lead roles are pretty cliche for horror films, yet they're portrayed and written so well that you end up simultaneously rooting for and wanting to see the downfall of both of these characters, perfectly mirroring how people treat real-world celebrity lives. While the body horror isn't as much of a spectacle now as it was in the works of Cronenberg or Carpenter, the film is still a bloody good time with a climax that is unforgettable. The Substance is the best body horror film in years. If you can stomach the unsightly nature this film evokes, you're not going to be disappointed. The best horror films are those that stick with us. Although all of these films on this list are sure to be memorable works for many years to come, perhaps the best horror film to come out of this decade so far has been Nope. A horse-wrangling pair of siblings seek to sell their horses to make ends meet after they're fired from a film set. Following strange occurrences on their property, they discover the presence of a UFO and attempt to document and capture it. Jordan Peele is no stranger to horror, with his breakout film Get Out, followed by Us, both reaching immense critical acclaim. Yet this film is by far his greatest achievement in the sheer horror that it evokes. The film takes all the things there is to love about the horror genre, refreshes and delivers them in a unique and engaging way. The film feels very dreamlike in its presentation, hypnotizing viewers with its cinematography and plot. Of course, you can't forget about the genuine horror the film elicits. Unforgettable in its scenes of true discomfort and terror. The creature in its design and presence is so well made that it feels like an animal that could actually exist. The film also pays homage to motion picture history as a part of its plot, further emphasizing its themes of exploitation in the industry. Nope is a spectacular and mesmerizing piece of cinema that has made its mark as one of the greatest science fiction horror films of all time. So these were 10 horror films to come out of the 2020s so far that you don't want to sleep on. Let me know your thoughts on these films if you've seen any of them. And if I missed some of your favorites, be sure to shout them out down in the comments below. Thanks for watching and have a spooky day.